The Raptors lose a tough one to the Portland Trailblazers in overtime, 128-118. Welcome to Raptors Tonight. I'm Randy Urban, joined by Jack Armstrong, Leo Rautins, and Paul Jones. Fellas, that was a really entertaining game, at least in the second half. Raps battled back to tie it in the final second on that Boucher tip. Force overtime. Overtime didn't go so well. What happened in that overtime, Leo?
Well, I think the one thing in overtime, you want to strike first, right? You want to
Yeah.
strike first and get the other team on their heels. And Raptors had some really bad turnovers. Kelly had two of them. They're just bad turnovers. And it just seems like the air just came out of their tires. And Portland did what the Raptors were hoping to do. They came out on fire, and that was it. Which it's unfortunate because they made a great effort to give themselves an opportunity to win. And the overtime was just flat. So tough way to end the game.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Jonesy,
I thought to Leo's point, didn't like the first couple of possessions of the overtime. They seemed tentative. You finally get back and you tie it and you think, okay, all right, let's make sure that we get this thing right. And they were tentative, but they weren't aggressive. I mean, Portland starts it with the lob to Ayton. They come right out. And to Leo's point, former Raptor coach Butch Carter, I'll never forget this. And at one time, Butch had the record for most points in overtime. And his thing was in overtime, score early and often. Like just get the lead in overtime, especially if you were the team that came back to force the overtime. That really puts the other guys on their heels and plants a seed of doubt. And I didn't think the Raptors did that, but listen, give them all kinds of credit for the get back. They give up 33 points in the first quarter. They gave up 39 to Phoenix. They got that game down to 3 points at 2 or 3 different times. And tonight they actually got back to even and just couldn't finish it off.
Jack, what was the main issue that stuck out to you in the loss?
In the loss, Leo made the point about turnovers. The Raptors had 20, and obviously second chance opportunities, even though it ended up equal. There were some big moments where those extra possessions, the Raptors missing 4 rotation guys, playing without a lot of size, and they struggled controlling the defensive glass. Hey, look, it was a very entertaining game, kind of like the Phoenix game. They fell back early and then really battled back. So undermanned team, but they played with a lot of heart tonight. And you just got to build on it. Obviously it's a tough opponent next in Denver that you got to deal with. But nonetheless, I saw a lot of good things tonight. Once again from Quickley, Boucher back-to-back. This was the second most minutes he played. And look, what the great Bill Russell say, hustle's a talent because not everyone does it. So, yeah, there's some things that he's going to make mistakes on in terms of defensive rotations and, occasional missed assignment here and there. But nonetheless, he gives it back to you in other ways. So I'm happy for Chris that in these 2 games, he's been able to show people just the kind of guy he is and why Raptor fans love him.
Mm-hmm. Leo, why was Deandre Ayton able to have the game he had tonight?
Oh, hey, the guys, first of all, you don't have Pirtle, right? You need size. You need size to play against Ayton. And when you see him in a game like tonight, you really wonder, why don't you see this from him all the time? Now, again, Raptors were undersized, and that hurt them. But he's a tremendous athlete. He can play above the rim. He can score around the basket. He can run the floor. Unfortunately, you don't see that as much as you should. But what we saw tonight, I think that if he locked in and he wanted to be a great player in this league, you could see that on a regular basis from him.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, we just don't see that as much as we should, which is a shame. But against the Raptors, he certainly brought it tonight.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of bringing it, Paul, Delano Banton, back-to-back great games for him, this time against his former team with the Toronto Raptors. It was interesting to me because, they've got this kid, Scoot Henderson, number 3 overall pick, and he's not starting. And then crunch time, big-time minutes are going to Banton down the stretch.
Well, look, Delano's one of those guys that I think he just needed to be in the right place, the right situation. And maybe this is the right time. He's been around the league for a few years. and he gets to a spot where, he probably understands things a bit better. He understands the league a bit better. He understands roles a bit better. Maybe he's kind of hit it off with Chauncey Billups. Look, sometimes it just takes a change of scenery for a guy. So I give Delano a credit. He was a kid that I always liked him when he was here in Toronto, but he was caught in a numbers game as well. So I'll say this, man, he looks confident. He really looks confident. He's knocking down threes. The parts of his games that were strengths continue to be strengths. Pushing the ball, handling the ball for a guy that size, playing on the perimeter. So, give Delano some credit.
Jack, going back to Raptors again, you mentioned Boucher with a positive game. I thought IQ took this one personally at times too. He was really energized, playing aggressive, trying to get his teammates involved and his teammates fired up.
Yeah, no, I'm really impressed by his overall game and his awareness. And look, he's got a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, he's got to do a lot of playmaking. Thank goodness they have Kelly Olynyk, because they can throw the ball to him and they can run a lot of different actions with him. But nonetheless, anytime he had the opportunity on the mismatch with Ayton in space, he took him to the basket sometimes. Other times he took it to the paint and created for others. There's a good balance going on right now between his ability to be a scoring-minded point guard and his ability to be a playmaker. He's your classic NBA lead guard. I wouldn't call him a true one. He's a little undersized to be a two, but nonetheless, he can impact winning for you. So really cool development to see how he's coming along since the All-Star break, in particular with his efficiency.
Leo, was there another performance that stuck out to you in the positive for the Raptors?
I thought Gary Trent did a lot of good things.
Yeah.
I mean, he hits a jumper, and he was playing hard in this game. And the Gary Trent and Quickley both did the job to the end of the game to give the Raptors that opportunity to get to overtime. So he was positive, and these are opportunities for both of these guys to find themselves, play together. Being shorthanded, there's opportunities to get good shots and put up some points. So hopefully they can continue to take advantage of that.
Randy, I thought Gary was very aggressive tonight. His former team, like, we don't see that much emotion from Gary. I saw more than the usual tonight from him.
Jonesy, I wanted to ask you about that missed call on the sideline there. I mean, the replay that the broadcast shows, it was like, how do you miss that? Like, you're looking directly at the play.
Exactly. And you know what, Randy? Listen, I think the referees have a feel in that the way the Raptors reacted in terms of their veracity and the volume, the number of guys that reacted. I mean, they couldn't turn around and give the ball to Toronto. But as I said before we got on here, I thought Darko was a little emotional in his challenge of the blocks. I didn't think they were going to overturn that. I think he was trying to make a point. But it would have been nice to have that challenge for that call. And you know what? I think the referees need a challenge. I think the referees need one portion in the last 2 minutes of the game where it's not a team challenge, but they aren't sure themselves. Remember, 2-3 years ago, every minute it was the games took forever. So they took that out. But I think you need to put back one time in the last 2 minutes where the referees, when they're not sure, can go to the monitor and say, we need to get it right. Because you're right, Kevin Cutler was looking right at it. And I think he anticipated when the ball was thrown off Boucher that it was going to land out of bounds. And he watched the ball hit and land out of bounds, already having his mind made up of the call and what was going to happen. I think that's one where they got to go to the monitor themselves, and it's their timeout, not any of the teams. We want to make sure ourselves. They need one.
Jack, do you think that the NBA will implement something like that? Will they look at that type of thing in the offseason?
I don't know whether they will or they won't, but Jonesy's recommendation makes absolutely too much sense. So I hope at some point in time that gets brought up, and I love it. I love what Jonesy said. and I'm all in with him on that. I really do. And yeah, it became crazy with all the reviews, and the games took forever. And but nonetheless, I think it's a really, really excellent, valid point, and I hope they do something about it.
Yeah. So Leo, no RJ Barrett tonight. Obviously, we know no Scotty Barnes, no Jakob Poeltl. Bruce Brown still out with that sore knee. So as the Raptors navigate these injuries, what are you hoping to see from this team for the remainder of this road trip and for the remainder of the season?
Well, what we saw tonight, compete, right? Except I know it's hard when you're shorthanded, but hey, Portland was shorthanded too. They were missing a lot of guys. You just can't dig yourself a hole, right? We've seen when they don't dig themselves a hole, when they dig themselves a hole. It's very, very difficult to come back in situations like that. They did a great job of coming back in the game, but you got to avoid those situations, right? For every guy playing right now, this is an opportunity. And like Jack said, playing hard is not, it's not a skill, but it should be, right? Because not everybody does it all the time. But this is an opportunity for each guy to show what he can do, and some guys are going to be asked to do more than they're capable of, and playing out of position, doing a lot of different things. But regardless, it's an opportunity, and if you play hard, you give yourself a chance, and you don't dig yourself a hole. So I'd like to see a lot more of that, and consistency of that from that end of playing.
All right, guys, great stuff. Going to stop it there. Next game for the Raptors, Monday night against the Denver Nuggets. Tip-off goes at 9 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, Raptors Tonight will go live on YouTube shortly after the game. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.